Welcome to Your Inspired Journey. I'm Carla Andrews, and I have the wonderful pleasure of being here with Irina. Am I saying it
Yes,
correctly?
correct.
Irina Krasko.
Hi,
Irina
Paula.
Krasko.
Yes,
Krasko?
correct.
All right. Irina Krasko or Krasko?
Krasko.
All right. I have the wonderful pleasure of being here with Irina Krasko, and she is a phenomenal person to learn and hear and really understand how she's gone on her journey now that she's able to take this learning, this awareness of taking it to others and helping them elevate their growth and their journey of living their best life. Welcome, welcome, Irina. How are you?
Thank you, Carla. Thank you so much. That's a very nice introduction. I'm very well, and I'm very pleased to be here. I think your podcast is very inspiring. It's my pleasure. It's my pride to be here. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to just learn more about who you are and just taking this whole journey of, and we know we've talked a little bit before we started the podcast, but to hear how you're going through this journey of growth and then now able to take it to help others so that they can elevate their life and be able to take their journey to the next level. How have you started? How did you start this whole process of understanding a little bit more about who you are so you can help others find out who they are?
So my story is maybe similar to kind of other people's stories, but I guess for everyone it goes in a very different way for themselves personally in terms of details. So as I said, up until 28 years old, I was a very um, very passionate about building my career and building my professional journey. I was so focused on studying, on getting a good job. I was working in finance, I was working in corporate, and I was very proud of myself. And I was doing well, and I was, I was good girl. I was doing everything right. Yeah. So
The good girl factor.
exactly, yes. I've always been a good girl, like for starting from school years. Always did my homework, always had good grades, and because I thought that's the way to be, right? And that was my main focus. And to be fair, all I saw was like me growing professionally. I wasn't even thinking about getting married, relationship. All my friends were already building their families, and maybe enjoying their lives a bit more than I was in a way in terms of social and interest. And I was just work, work, work. And then at some point, when it was getting a bit to the stage when it was getting a bit more serious and more there was more responsibilities in my job. It was getting more stressful, and because again I'm so responsible and I want to deliver, I want to do my best. I was getting stressed if I wasn't doing
Mhm.
something right, or I was very self-conscious. And at some
Did
point
did you find yourself like being critical of yourself?
I was um, I was critical. Yes, definitely. And I was this self-consciousness. I was worried about what people think about me a lot because corporate life, big fishes, all the bosses of the bosses, they're so smart, and they to me they seemed like a perfect example, right? And I was
Mhm.
just starting my journey, and there was a lot to learn, but I assumed in my head all the time that I'm supposed to know everything.
Mm.
And it was making me um, scared in a way, stressed to show up and to do my best, because I was even scared sometimes to ask questions, because I
Yeah.
thought I'm supposed to know that. I was putting too much pressure on myself, and I was learning on the background and
I'm
researching everything.
So
Yeah.
I'm hearing you saying this a couple of times now, where you say, "I'm supposed to know this." Have you connected this feeling of I needed to know or I needed to impress with some type of with a like a childhood issue or connection, something that happened when you were young? Have you ever made a connection to that?
Yes, I did, and it was actually coming through my later coaching sessions that I had already later on in my life.
Okay.
And it's so true. You're really spot on. It was coming through the my family is very conservative. I grew up in Latvia, so it's like post-Soviet mentality. I love my parents to pieces, but they're very conservative, and for them, wanting the best for me, it was all confined by rules, certain rules of the
Mm-hmm.
society of how you're supposed to be. And um, my mom used to say that a lot. Don't do this because people will think bad of you, or what am I going to tell my friends if you do this? That
Mm.
kind of little um, phrases. I think, even though I
But
never agreed with her, but I guess it's still
stuck.
getting stuck in
It's,
your head. As a child, you absorb everything like a sponge.
so it's interesting how it like as you mentioned, you didn't want to hear it. You thought that you didn't hear it, but and actually you were listening to the point now it affected how you were making decisions, how you were making
Yes.
choices, and how you whether it paralyzed you to do something or not based on these phrases that we hear when we're young.
Yes, yes. As much as we don't want to absorb something, it still gets into our
Hmm.
subconscious somehow. And there are lots of little things that came up when I left home at the young age. Not young age, I was around 20. When I left home, and something that I thought about my parents that I didn't like, but then I started noticing about myself, in my behaviors, in what I was doing, that I'm actually doing it exactly as my parents would have done it. So
Wow.
it's so, yeah, it's interesting how it all settles down in our heads and our subconscious, and then comes up later in life. We're not even realizing that it's happening.
It's interesting because it's almost as if whether we choose to not like it or not, but when it comes to the comfortability or safe zone, or when we're falling in the space of uncertainty, we go to what we know. And whether
Exactly.
you didn't like it or not, you went to what it is that you knew, and
Yes.
that is being under the household of of those rules or those statements or those sayings, and that's what that was common in like you said in your subconscious.
Yes. It's like a survival mechanism in your brain. It's instinctively, our mind doesn't like anything that we don't know. Anything that's unknown is a death threat to the mind.
Yeah.
So it doesn't like to be outside of comfort zone, as we know, um,
Hmm.
and especially in the critical situations, or when something is happening. What you naturally do, you go back to the basics, to what you know, so that you don't stress even more to do something that you don't know in this unknown situation. um,
Nice.
unless you unless you consciously realize it, unless you consciously know what your fears are, what are your limiting beliefs, what is the story that you're telling yourself that is not true, and you consciously change that story, and start noticing when it comes up. uh,
And it's a level of awareness.
yes,
We don't know what we don't know, but when we do, it's this is the time to make the choice of changing it or staying in it.
exactly, yes. And knowing it is already a big step um,
Hmm.
towards changes, good changes.
So how have you seen that going through this process as you were growing up, and you noticed by your transformation in life of growing as a person, as a business, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, now that you're helping others with it, like how have you seen this impact others as they're going on their journey of growth?
the impact is, to be fair, um, it's much bigger, I think, than what it seems in the beginning. It's very often that when I work with my clients and we work on one issue that they have in life, let's say it's something that's not working, um, again with their career, for example. But when we start revealing what are the real issues, where those blocks are sitting, and what is stopping them from doing what they want, and progressing,
Mhm.
getting what they want, it actually affects so many other parts of their lives, and it shows up in so many other areas. It can be relationships, it can be a relationship with kids, very often even affects health, how they perceive
Mhm.
themselves. um, it's one little thing in your head can affect so many parts of your life and show up in so many ways. I think that's how big it can be, even if
Mhm.
you don't realize it's that big.
Yeah, the impact becomes it's not category, it's not in a category that you have this impact. It shows up everywhere. It's like saying having a, basically like saying having a desk that's neat, but then you go to the person's house and their house is not neat. It's, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you're carrying a messy desk, most likely at work, when you go home, there may be an area of the home that's messy, or
Yes,
not
yeah,
as organized. So it's like if you're organized at home, you bring that to the job.
exactly.
You find yourself being more organized. If you're more disciplined, it tends to fall into each area of your life. So yes, it will show itself up, and that includes being stuck, or having fear, or not, having being critical. If you're critical of yourself, you may find yourself being critical of others. So
Absolutely.
yes, so it's important to identify those. So